something very interesting happens once you hit your 30s. It is this pressure, this buildup that is uncomfortable to ignore. And we're trying to understand, what is it asking of you? Most often, it is a calling towards living authentically, to reach wholeness. Now, the question is, why do men at that age struggle with it? What's the holdup? Why do we get stuck in our past, in the stories that we've developed? And in the course of the last 10 years of not just teaching martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but coaching men in personal development, coaching kids, teenagers, elders, I've had the whole swath. And there's one thing that I've really noticed consistently, is that once you pass 25, that is when your real life starts to begin. Because your 20s are what? This is your persona development phase. And the persona is what you present to the world. The one different to you in your private life. The one you want people to see. And the sides of you don't want people to see, that you push away, perhaps you weren't allowed to express, or maybe you just have never felt that you have the right to demonstrate these skills, or you're not worthy of it, or you're going to be laughed at. Whatever the case, it gets dumped into the unconscious. This is the era where you're building your career, your business, your friends, your environment, your pretty much everything. It doesn't always have to be positive. It can be in the negatives as well. It's the era of coping strategies. You really start to fine tune. Your complexes really form and shape themselves, and they find a place in your ego. And they are able to now influence and dictate and decide what you think, do, or say. And then also masking your ability to cover up your emotions, especially for men, as emotions are very taboo and they don't want to be expressed too much other than just stoicism. And this also causes us to act a particular way in front of other people. But there's a reason why I work with men above 25, because this is the era of wholeness, where you begin to shed away the old stories that no longer serve you. And what do I mean by that? An old story could be that in order for you to be worthy, just worthy of existence, you must succeed at a high level. And if you don't succeed at a high level, then you're nothing but a bottom feeder. Loser, meant for nothing, just like a leper. Keep distance. You start to orient towards a more meaningful path. So not only was that story what you were pointing towards, you were trying to be X, Y, and Z because you felt unworthy deeply because of past experiences. And that was your story. That was your way to orient towards your North Star. But eventually, this loses its fuel. It starts to die. And you start to now you want to crave something more meaningful. You want to actually get up and move for something that you care about deeply, that you feel is bigger than you. Because the self, or the soul, as I like to say it, is calling you towards living fully. You see, the ego, the one we all live through for the most of our lives, is like a keyhole. I don't know if that, just pretend that's a keyhole. There you go. The ego is seeing through a keyhole. It's so tight, so narrow, and the ego is naturally very insecure, always worried, very self-conscious about what people are saying, what people are doing. How do I fit in here? How do I fit in there? And it is extremely exhausting. It's fatiguing. And when you're in your early 20s, mid-20s, you feel you kind of have the vitality to keep it going. But for those that are craving something more, something bigger than themselves, you'll feel this sense to want to challenge it. But now, why is it so difficult? What is it that, from my experience, most men have told me that they fear? And what is it that I have feared myself? I'm going to read from the book, Meeting the Shadow, The Hidden Power of the Dark Side of Human Nature. It's a really nice book. It has a collection of different ideas on on depth psychology, shadow work. And there was a section that, as I was reading through, really stuck out to me, and I thought it'd be a really great addition for the video. I'm going to pop it up on the screen so you can read along with me. A patient in psychotherapy does not literally return to childhood to unlearn the self-destructive pattern he evolved in growing up. Although he may engage in much regressive experimentation in order to undo the negative learning, what is essential is that he be able to relinquish his attachment to his pathway. Be able to say to himself, I have wasted X years of my life in a painful and useless pursuit. This is sad, but I now have the opportunity to try another approach. This is hard for people to do. There is a strong temptation either to rationalize our wrong turnings as a necessary part of our development. As an example bracket, it taught me to discipline. Sorry, little sticker fell off. It taught me to discipline. Or to deny that we participated fully in them. Bracket, that was before I became enlightened. Giving up these two evasions leads initially to despair. But as Alexander Lowen points out, despair is the only cure for illusion. Without despair, we cannot transfer our allegiance to reality. It is a kind of mourning period for our fantasies, and some people do not survive this despair. But no major change within a person can occur without it. When I read this, this was a massive realization for me, and more so just developing a deeper idea of my own history, my own past. When I went through my transition from being the persona that I had in my early 20s, being the world champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, being dominant, submitting everybody, showing how powerful I am, how strong I am, that the bullies of the past, if they dare do it now, they're going to have a bad day. When I transitioned, I got to my mid-20s, 25 literally, then all of a sudden I was having this resistance and the desire to be a champion all was starting to go away, and I almost felt like I woke up to it, was so disappointed, was in such depression. And I lasted in that state for years. It was years and years that I was not knowing who the hell I am anymore. I'm supposed to be this world champion. That's why I put all my eggs went in that basket. And that period in between was absolutely devastating, but it was right. The book is right. It is exactly what was needed in order to then evolve into the more pure, truest version of you. Just a little bit closer. It's not right away. You didn't hit the jackpot in that first transition. It takes multiple. But you just got yourself to be a little bit closer, a little bit braver. So the ego must die in order to make room for the truer self. So you can imagine if you're in you hit your 30s, you've developed something for such a long time. You've built maybe a business around it, your friends, you've had a certain dynamic with your family. It's attached to all those things. And so, of course, there's a natural feeling that when that part dies, what happens to the rest? And you must enter that desert is what I call, you're wandering the desert, the place in between identities, who you were at your 20s and who you are now moving into your 30s. There is a gap in between. You don't just jump across in 2 seconds, right? That is the era of what's also called the dark night of the soul. That's what Carl Jung labeled it as. And it's a period of absolute misery. It is. It really is. And if you don't have any tools and strategies, it just makes it absolutely miserable to be a part of, let alone if you do it by yourself. And what most people usually, they don't often think this. They don't think the first part. What they often think is that, well, what if everything that I have worked for just vanishes? Everything that I've built, everything that I've created, would it just like go away? They're also feeling that they're leaving behind a piece of themselves. Even if the story you've developed, let's say how much perfectionism has imprisoned you, it's been ruining the quality of your life. But yet you feel attached to it because in some parts, it's helped you. It's allowed you to develop an amazing talent for music, or the ability to always hand in a piece of work or project that was just unbelievable, was incredible. And so we fear that if we lose the story, we lose everything else with it. But it's not true. You are throwing the baby out with the bathwater. In reality, this is the choice. Whenever you hit your 30s, you have two options. So it's a road. The road goes into two directions. You can maintain your ego. In other words, you can develop it further, connect to it more. You've met people in your life, I'm sure, that when you've communicated with them, you've noticed that there is this sort of barrier between you two. You're not really getting access to who this person really is. And you're not exactly sure why, but you can definitely tell they are protecting something. They are defending an identity. Something that if you ask too many questions about, it would be a no-go. And you would see their resistance really flare up. They get defensive, often maybe even a little bit vile towards you. Or you have the second road, which is to dissolve it. And the idea behind dissolving is really separating the wheat from the chaff. Letting go of the story right now that no longer serves you. But now moving forward with what you have developed. So if it's perfectionism, what are some of the positive aspects of perfectionism? Well, you're going to develop a high amount of skill. You are. The more you desire perfection, the more you're going to be fine-tuned to the absolute details. You'll know the foundation of what you're doing. You'll have such a deep connection to it. You will. Because once you get to the pillars, that's my obsession. I have an element of perfectionism that I've separated the wheat from the chaff over the many years of doing shadow work and applying my own system to myself. That now I can actually take the perfectionism without everything else with it. So in other words, I can get to the absolute pillars of what I'm doing. I want to find the foundation. And I can get there without all the extra stuff. And what's the extra stuff? Well, everything else is the anxiety, the self-worth issue, meaning your work is tied, your identity is tied to the result of your work. Comparison. Especially now with social media, you get the illusion that everyone else is just doing so much better and they're all perfect and you suck. But the idea behind transitioning into the era where you're letting the ego die and wash away means that you are moving towards the integration process, where everything that you have developed here follows. But the story that has been attached to all of this leaves you. Because when you get to the core of who you are, the truer self, that is where God exists, the universe, the source, abundance, an endless feeling of love and ambition and meaning you can find within that space. And in that environment, you don't really have excess anxiety. You'll have natural anxiety. You're a human being, right? It's normal. I'm not saying you're not going to have any of these emotions. But what I am saying is you're no longer going to be controlled by these emotions while you're in there. The closer you move to the center, the more pure it becomes, the more clean energy. An ambition you don't need to force. Action you don't need to force. Just starts to come to you naturally. So write this down. You will gain more than you lose. Releasing the ego is not all of a sudden you being a fraction of yourself, but in fact, quite the opposite. You will begin to live more fully, no longer restricted, because the self is a wider and larger container that can hold more things, more ideas, more paradoxes, contradictions. It can sit within life's harsh reality more comfortably than the ego can. You will no longer be controlled by your stories, or in other words, your traumas. Because these narratives grip you and they limit what you can do, what you can be, what you can express. That gives you life, a sense of growth. However, you must walk through the desert. There's no way around it. You have to be in that space in between. You have to confront your past. The part of you that you really do not want to look at. because it's too sensitive or too uncomfortable. It's time. Shed your ego so that you can meet yourself again for the first time since childhood. And when I say childhood, I don't mean the spontaneous action, the impulsive behavior, the development of narcissism during the ages, I think between 3 and 5 years old, I believe, where they're very much interested in just their own needs being met. I don't mean that at all. What I'm talking about is you are nothing but your purest self. You have yet to develop any layers of defensive action. Your ego has not yet developed its protective mechanisms, its avoidance, its specific desires. It's different to every person. The desire to be bigger than somebody else, to be smarter, faster, it hasn't done that yet. So you are still in that pure spirit. And when you get to that place, the closer you move towards it, you will crave it more and more. And that's when the journey to fully live really actually begins. Thank you very much, everybody. I will see you on the next video.